Okay, we're going to talk about your long essay question. In your guys' AP test, your long essay question, you'll have option 1 and option 2. Chances are one of those options is going to be a continuities and change essay. So, what we're going to do right now is go over a fairly classical one dealing with the Indian Ocean. Like I mentioned in class, or I think I mentioned in class, is that this one comes up quite frequently. The AP people like to use it a lot because it's a fairly easy one, and chances are most AP teachers would have covered the Indian Ocean trade basin time frame. So it gives the AP people a lot of leeway, and it also helps them understand whether you guys are understanding the context or not. So we're going to go from 650 CE to 1450 CE, although as it's mentioned here, the AP exam would actually let you go up to 1750. So that's a fairly wide range. So you've got a lot of time to work with this essay. And what I mean by that is that obviously 650 to 1450 CE, that's a long time period to work with. That's like, what, 800 years almost? So we're going to break down what are some continuities within this time frame and what are some changes. And then, of course, what I want you guys to do in your actual essay is to, put it all together. So here we go. Okay, so patterns of interaction at the beginning of the time period. We have Malay sailors begin riding monsoons to go to China and India, and these guys pass on this knowledge to other people that they come into contact with. There is a lot of desire for cotton and sugar from India during this time period, and on the opposite end of that, there's a desire for silk from China and spices from East Indies, and cinnamon, pepper, cloves, nutmeg, mace are just a few of those spices that people want. So you've got one group wanting one thing, more or less, cotton and sugar, and the other side wanting, silk and spices. And so pretty much you've got, that's one of the main reasons why you've got this Indian Ocean Basin trade going on so frequently during all these time periods, and it's still going on today. I mean, cotton, sugar, silk, spices are very important in our modern day economy, just like it was back then. So what does it look like? Well, here it is. You've got trade routes going pretty much. Well, now these are again mostly they're all sea lane routes. Land ones would be through the Silk Road, but that's not what this essay is about. So let's keep in mind that we've got water routes, and the main hubs, of course, are along that would be the east coast of Africa, and of course in India, and then of course throughout the southeast area, and of course China. Please recognize that you have the monsoon weather patterns. So you've got from November to February, you've got ships going from India to Africa. And then you got a couple months turnaround, and then from April to September, you've got ships going from Africa to India, and of course after that they're going to the Bay of Bengal here, and then of course down to Southeast Asia, Sumatra, and then of course on to South China Sea, and then into China. So these are the areas that it's concentrating, and there's a lot to play with here. You've got cultures in China, and you've got cultures in India, cultures in Africa, and of course you've got the spreading of languages and food and spices and religion and a whole variety of different things going on in this part of the world. All right. What empires are driving trade during this time period? Again, you start out with sailors and then Indian traders. You've got basically in the 650s, okay, or the closer part to the 650s, You've got the Umayyad dynasty and the Abbasid dynasty. That's, again, your Persian Empire / Islam over there. You've got the Tang dynasty and the Song dynasty, okay, in China. But you also got Swahili city-states forming. We haven't talked necessarily about those yet, but we will. It should be in our next couple chapters here. And then you've got the Straits of Malacca, okay, and the Shirviyaha, I'm trying to say that right anyway, empire that lasts roughly 400 years. Now, right in the middle of all that, you've got the Mongols. And once again, the Mongols are unique, and we're going to talk about the Mongols, and I love talking about the Mongols, but the Mongols basically control sea trade and the Silk Road during this time period, or at least a good part of it. Definitely the Silk Road. Almost the entire Silk Road is controlled by the Mongols. So they're kind of a go-between, a middleman between those two dates, the 650 date and the 1450 date. Okay, you've got the Mongols in there, so they're a good, way of transversing between the two. You got the Ming Dynasty in China after the Tang and the Song. You've got the Ming Dynasty comes a little bit after the Song Dynasty, and then of course in the 1450s you got finally the arrival of European traders in the Indian Ocean Basin. So they're going that way all around Africa because they've been cut off by the Islamic states in northern Africa, and of course the Islamic states have basically cut off Europe from this trade route. So that's why the Europeans are going around Africa. So, as I mentioned, here's a map that kind of illustrates the Mongol Empire. It's the largest empire that we'll talk about. And, they spread the compass, printing, gunpowder. They also spread plague and diseases, people, languages. The Mongols pretty much are the facilitator of all this trade in the early 1200s, 1300s era. So keep that in mind as you guys are writing your essay. All right, continuities. What's staying the same during these time periods? You've got the reliance on the monsoon winds. Perfect. That's a good one to talk about. Exchanging of goods is constant. So not much difference in what people in the 650 want and the 1450 want. They want sugar, cotton, spices, textiles, silk. And so that remains the same. The spreading of religion, of course. None of these religions die out. So you got Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, to a certain degree, a smaller extent, Christianity. Christianity will pretty much make it all the way to India and pretty much stop there. I mean, it will kind of filter into China a little bit and Japan, but not really in large areas. But you can talk about Buddhism, Hindu, and Islam. Definitely ones that reach all aspects of the Indian Ocean trade and will remain so. The spread of advances, again, those remain the same. Gunpowder, compasses, printing, math from China. So you got the spreading of all these advances, that's a continuity. So as all the years go by, you've got the development of some sort of modern technology forming, okay, and of course it's going constantly throughout, all right? Changes, quite a few to play with here. Trade routes expand. So during this time period, you've got the creeping in of other trade routes in Eastern Africa and the Swahili states, and greater inclusion of China and the Tang and the Song. So for a while, the Chinese backed away from trading with the rest of the world, and now they're kind of getting back into it. Dominating empires will definitely change. So you've got the rise of Islam throughout Africa and into the Middle East and a little bit in India. Okay, and that's going to take over from whatever was there before You got the reunification of China during this time period. So before China was, it formed its dynasties and then broke up and then formed again and broke up. So during this time period, you've got the Tang and the Song kind of back to back, and there isn't so much the breaking up of the dynasties. So they're kind of consistent. They just kind of change names, and so they're kind of back in the game as it was. You've got the rise of the Mongols, big, huge change. It leads to increased interest in trade by Europeans. So once again, the Mongols are going to open up the Silk Road again to the Europeans, and all of a sudden, once again, the Europeans are going to be flushed with all these different items that they didn't have before. The only problem for that is that it comes on the heels of the rise of Islam. So as the Europeans are looking at these trade goods and they're saying, wow, we really like these things, they're going to want more of it, but they run up against that Islamic bloc there, and of course Islam's not going to trade with the Christian Europeans, so the Christians are saying, okay, how do we basically get around these Islamic traders, because either they won't trade with us, or if they will trade us, they're going to jack up the price so much. So of course the one way is through the Silk Road, but that takes forever. It takes almost a year, I think, to get across the Silk Road, and of course you can't can't carry a lot of items. So the other way is going around Africa and into the East Indian Ocean, and then of course this takes a lot of time because if you miss the monsoon seasons, then that throws everything off. So we've got that change. So again, Mongols. Ming initially held off Europeans, but withdrew open door for Europeans. So that's a change. So the Ming dynasty is like, oh, okay, let's kind of trade with these Europeans. Oh, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't. Okay, well, we are going to again, and then of course they say, no, it's better that we don't. So they kind of flip back and forth a lot. So that's a change. I wouldn't necessarily use that one too much. It's kind of flip-flopping. They usually they want to see changes that occurred and kind of break away from the norm. You got the creation of new states. Again, I'll try to say that one. Servia is one. You've got Swahili city-states. Again, a mixture of Arabic and Bantu languages. And then, of course, towards the end of the time frame, you got the participation of European powers, primarily the Portuguese and the Dutch. So, lots of changes going on. So, you got a lot to play with. Just make sure that when you are talking about these changes, dates aren't that important, although, you should probably know them. But at least get them in the right order. So, you don't want to talk necessarily about the rise of Islam and then, the rise of Mongols and get those flip-flopped. You want to make sure that the orders are correct when you're talking about changes, because obviously if you're talking about something that happens and I'm just using this as an example, 1800s and, second before you talk about the coming of the Europeans, then the AP people are going to look at the essay and go, they don't know even their own chronological order, so they're going to kind of not give you the points for that. All right, global context, what's going on during this time period that is allowing these changes and continuities to take place. The construction of large and powerful states, providing security for merchants and travelers which held long-distance commerce. So once again, large, powerful states, Mongols, all right, are basically saying, hey, we're allowing merchants and travelers to go through our lands without worrying about being, taken of their goods and killed off and things like that, because they recognize, hey, if we've got these merchants and travelers coming through our lands, they're spreading more wealth to us, which means that we're obviously becoming richer and more powerful. So, golden age of powerful states led to the flourishing of ideas and many advances. So, as these city-states, powerful states, become more powerful, things solidify for them, things calm down, things become more peaceful, and of course, ideas and advances in sailing and printing, gunpowder, compasses, looking at the stars and figuring out how to navigate by them. They all start, coming out of this time frame. So keep that in mind as you're writing your essay. So intro with a thesis. Again, we want to make sure that we don't necessarily use the word thesis anymore. We want to use the word claim. From 650 CE to 1450 CE, commerce along Indian Ocean trade routes was flourishing. So that's your, if you want to use a thesis / claim, you might want to start there and use that one. Okay, so your thesis statement might look like something like this. While the spread of ideas and goods remained constant, the empires dominating this trade changed, which led to the creation of new states as well as the eventual participation of Europeans in the Indian Ocean trade networks. So at this point, you need to say to yourself, okay, I've mentioned the word constant, which is something you need to do, and of course change. Again, that's a continuity and change essay. So constants are ideas and goods, so obviously you might want to focus a paragraph on that. And then the changes, you mentioned empires, again, plural. So you might want to mention the two empires that, helped change all this, whether it be the Swahili one or the Mongols or the Tang or the Song. It doesn't per se matter as long as you can back up your information with facts and make those facts stick to your claim or your thesis statement. So you've got a lot to work with here. Don't forget to analyze. Okay, there is no documents to fall back on. So you're going to definitely have to remember specific key facts and points within what you've learned. And of course, use that information to analyze and construct an essay that proves your claim. So make sure that you not only stating what the changes and continuities are, but also explain why. And that's really important. So you can't just say, well, one of the things that stayed the same was trade. They traded a lot of, sugar, silk, cotton, and so on. Okay, saying that's great, but you got to explain why that was a constant. Like people wanted it, people needed it, people understood that they needed these spices for their food, so they wouldn't go bad, or whatever the case, whatever the reason is that you're giving. Number one, it's got to be sound right. It's got to be kind of factual, and it's got to be on target with what you say and what you put down. But you can't just, like I said, say, well, trade was important. Okay, you got to explain why it's important. Okay, so again, got a lot to chew on with this particular essay. There's a lot here, but this is one type of essay that they're going to throw out to you. This one, in a lot of ways, kind of scares me more than the DBQ because you don't have the documents to fall back on. I mean, when you're looking at the DBQ, if you get stuck someplace, you can go back to a document and go, oh yeah, I remember that. This particular essay, you don't have that option. You either know the information or you don't. You understand what the continuities and changes are, or you don't, and you need to figure it out fairly quickly. So my view on this one is that, you look at what the essay is asking of you. You kind of say, write down really fast changes, continuity. Kind of do like a T-chart. Write some things down on each side. You get 2 or 3 main points down, and then boom, you're off and running with the essay. So hopefully this will help you guys out. I think what I'm going to do is stick with the claim that's there, allow you guys to kind of gnaw on the information that I'm lecturing about, and then we'll go from there when it comes time to write the essay. Once again, you'll probably only have about 35 minutes in class to write it, so be prepared. Thanks for listening.